Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the lecture Diversity of Life on Earth. In this section we're going to focus on animals including humans. Our objectives for this lecture are to demonstrate an understanding of the tree of life as a scientific hypothesis, accounting for the development and evolution of life on Earth. You should be able to describe how human evolution is supported by scientific evidence. You'll also be able to demonstrate an understanding of the classification and evolution of organisms. You should be able to list the domains of organisms, classify organisms into the correct kingdoms for each domain, and distinguish between major characteristics of members of the three domains. All right, so animals are extremely diverse. So if you look at this tree, starting up at Kingdom Animalia, it includes sponges, so animals where they don't have true tissues, and animals that do have true tissues. We have some that have, these are different developmental features, right? So animals with 3 cell layers, like echinoderms and chordates. We also have protostome animals where there are 3 germ layers, but they form the mouth rather than the anus. And these are different types of worms, arthropods, mollusks, and lastly, animals with 2 germ layers like cnidarians, things like anemones and jellyfish. All right, so animals live almost everywhere, and there are more than 1.3 million known animal species, and there are many more that have not been described and named by science yet. Animals vary greatly in size, habitat, body form, and intelligence. So what is an animal? Well, animals all have a specific set of features in common. They're multicellular with eukaryotic cells that lack cell walls. They're heterotrophic. They eat food by ingestion. They go through a blastula stage of development. And their cells produce an extracellular matrix. And we'll talk about what those things are here. All right, and remember our kingdom diversity phylogeny. This tree of life shows all living things can fit on this tree somewhere. So there's the common ancestor to all life, which gave rise to the 3 domains. Domain bacteria, archaea, and domain eukarya or eukaryota. And we'll focus on this domain today. And specifically, eukarya has 4 kingdoms. Protista is not well resolved yet. We talked about that in the previous lecture about microbial life. Plants, fungi, and then animals. Animal life began in water, and the first animals arose about 570 million years ago. They probably resembled aquatic protists called choanoflagellates. So we go way back in time. Origin of animals in the ocean, about 570 million years ago. Early animals lived in the sea, and these ediacarans are the earliest fossil animals from the Precambrian eon. They died out about 544 million years ago and left no modern descendants. Most living animals originated in the Cambrian period, including sponges, jellyfish, arthropods, mollusks, and many types of worms. Animal diversity reflects their shared ancestry. So animals share similarities because they evolved from a common ancestor with those features. The 9 animal phyla are grouped based on features of morphology, development, and DNA. Right, so if we look at the ancestral protists that gave rise to animals, we see that that ancestral or the multicellularity, evolved here because all of these organisms upstream from this point are all multicellular, right? Now, sponges had no tissues. Tissues are where cells work together to perform a function. True tissues first arose here after sponges split off. Then we have radial symmetry. So if you were to slice this organism like a pizza, it would be symmetrical, right? No matter which way you cut a circle in half, as long as it's an even half, both sides are the same. That's radial symmetry. Bilateral symmetry is the kind of symmetry humans have, where you have a left side and a right side. So all these organisms, from flatworms up to chordates, these animals all have bilateral symmetry. Now, if we look down here at the protostomes, the mouth arises from the first opening in an embryo. So this is a developmental feature. So arthropods through flatworms all have the mouth arise first, developmentally. And arthropods and roundworms make up the group Ecdysozoa. You don't need to know these middle terms here, but they molt. They shed their skin. These groups here have characteristic larvae, and we've used DNA to separate out these groups, genetic similarities and differences. And then the top group here, chordates and echinoderms, the mouth arises from a second opening in the embryo, so these have different developmental stages. All right, animals are classified by having tissues. Oh, we've already talked about this. So the first branching point distinguishes animals with true body tissues from animals with no true body tissues. Here's some images that show the different types of symmetry. So here's a hydra, it's an cnidarian. These actually live on the undersides of lily pads. You can find them in Michigan. They're about a centimeter tall. But hydra have radial symmetry. It doesn't matter which way you slice it, it would be symmetrical. Crayfish have bilateral symmetry. They have a left and a right side. All right, and then as far as germ layer development goes, here's a blastula. So early in development, animals undergo a process called gastrulation. This is when the gastrointestinal tract begins to be formed. In some animals, the gastrula only develops two tissue layers, an endoderm and an ectoderm. In others, a third tissue layer called mesoderm develops. So here we are, bilateral, radial symmetry. All right, in protostomes, the gastrula's first indentation develops into the mouth, and the anus develops from the second opening. In deuterostomes, it's the reverse. Animals are also classified by their body cavity. So a coelom is a body cavity surrounded on all sides by mesoderm. Bilaterally symmetrical animals have different types of coeloms. The fluid of the coelom cushions the body organs and enables them to shift as the animal bends and moves. Animals are also classified by their digestive tracts. Animals have an incomplete digestive tract if the mouth both takes in food and ejects waste, like this anemone. Animals have a complete digestive tract if food passes in one direction from the mouth and out through the anus. Animals are also classified by segmentation. Some animals' bodies are segmented or divided into repeated parts. Segmentation adds to the body's flexibility and increases the potential for the development of specialized body parts. So this is an example of an earthworm, an annelid, but they are segmented. All right, so which of these statements is correct? Some animals are unicellular, others are multicellular. All animals with two germ layers are protostomes. Segmented animals lack a true coelom, or all deuterostomes have bilateral symmetry. And it's the last one. Good. Because if you remember on that tree, we see that deuterostomes come after bilateral symmetry. All right, and which of the following animals have bilateral symmetry? Good. Only the elephant has a left and a right side, right? The cnidaria or the jellyfish, which is a cnidarian, and the sponge, these have radial symmetry. And actually, a starfish has a special type of symmetry called pentaradial symmetry, because there's 5 points at which they are symmetrical instead of just one, like in bilateral symmetry. Oh my goodness. Bilateral symmetry on the elephant. All right, so what features were used to build the animal phylogenetic tree? Body form, developmental characteristics, and genetic sequences. All right, this is a really nice summary slide. I will not ask you on the exam to have memorized these different phyla of animals, but you should be able to know that these are all characteristics that animals may have, all right? So at most on the exam, I will ask you to be able to place any given organism into the proper kingdom. All right, sponges or porifera are simple animals. They're aquatic and sessile. Sessile means they're anchored to the surface, so they don't move. And they do not have true tissues. They have hollow bodies that are either asymmetric or radially symmetric. And they're filter feeders. So water moves into a sponge's body through the pores on its sides and then out through a hole at the top. This allows the sponge to trap food and eliminate waste. Sponges are also hermaphrodites. Reproduction can be asexual by budding. And budding would be where there's a little sponge on the side here that eventually grows big enough to be its own individual. Or they can release sperm into the water and fertilize eggs retained in the body of the sponge. So the sperm would be sucked in through their filtration method to fertilize their eggs. So they can do both asexual and sexual reproduction. Cnidarians are the simplest animals with tissues. They're aquatic, and they have radial symmetry. They have specialized cells that they use to sting other animals called nematocysts. And cnidarians include a really diverse group of organisms here. So we've got jellyfish. This is that hydra I told you about you can find on the undersides of lily pads here in Michigan. Coral, so the actual coral animal, and they secrete a calcium carbonate structure that they live in, and that's what actually builds up the structure of the reef. And anemones are another type of cnidarian. Cnidarians have an incomplete digestive tract and 2 tissue layers. One end of the body has an opening, the mouth, which is surrounded by a ring of tentacles. Cnidarians transition between a sessile polyp form, where they're anchored to something, and a free-swimming medusa. A medusa looks like a jellyfish. Coral cnidarians are the basis of crucial ocean ecosystems. Corals secrete calcium carbonate exoskeletons that accumulate to build magnificent coral reefs, which are home to many different animals. Coral reefs protect coastlines from erosion as well, and the calcium carbonate in the reefs play an important role in the carbon cycle. Excuse me. If you've paid attention to threats to ecosystems globally, coral reefs are at risk because of global warming and also from ocean acidification. So you've all done the baking soda and vinegar experiment, right? Where it bubbles up like white lava from a volcano. The same chemical reaction happens to this calcium carbonate when ocean water becomes acidic, and it actually eats away the calcium carbonate of the reef and destroys that structural integrity. So we lose these huge ecosystem services that coral reefs provide. All right, what features set sponges and cnidarians apart from the rest of animals? Well, sponges don't have tissues and are asymmetrical or radial symmetrical. Cnidarians do have tissues and are radially symmetrical. Flatworms are simple protostomes. Flatworms, phylum Platyhelminthes, are bilaterally symmetric with 3 germ layers. Planarians, flukes, and tapeworms are 3 different groups of flatworms. So these 2 are free-living types of worms that you could find in pond water or ocean water. And these 2 are groups that are typically endoparasites. You'd find them living within some other animal. Their flat body shape increases surface area and allows for efficient gas exchange in the absence of a coelom and a specialized respiratory or circulatory system. So planarians are free-living. That means they're not endoparasites. A feeding structure called the pharynx brings food into the body and secretes undigested food. A brain and nerve cords make up the nervous system. It can sense touch, chemicals, and even light. Mollusks are soft, unsegmented protostomes. Mollusks are a large and diverse phylum with a true coelom. Mollusk features a mantle that secretes the shell. So mollusks would be things like clams, snails, even slugs. A muscular foot used for locomotion, a visceral mass where organs are found, and a radula for feeding. They're a diverse group. Chitons have 8 overlapping shells. Bivalves have hinged shells, like the scallop here. Gastropods have spiral shells, like a snail or a slug. And cephalopods have internal or absent shells, like an octopus or a squid. Mollusks have multiple organ systems. The visceral mass houses organs that make up respiratory, excretory, nervous, reproductive, and circulatory systems. All right, annelids are segmented worms. So annelids are characterized by body segments, a true coelom, and a complete digestive tract. So we're over here, earthworms. Earthworms and leeches are terrestrial annelids. Polychaetes live in the water. Many ecosystems depend on earthworms. Earthworms aerate and fertilize the soil. They're more complex than they look, and they have a number of organ systems, including a complete digestive tract, closed circulatory system with aortic arches, a nervous system that includes a brain and a ventral nerve cord, excretory organs in each body segment, and a saddle-like thickening area which holds eggs in a specialized cocoon. Nematodes are unsegmented worms or roundworms. And although roundworms, nematodes, look worm-like, their closest evolutionary relatives are actually arthropods. Most roundworms are microscopic, and they're extremely abundant in almost every habitat. Nematodes have few organ systems. This roundworm's nervous system includes a brain and nerve cords. They lack specialized circulatory and respiratory organs, and their pseudocoelom acts as a hydrostatic skeleton. What this means is that their body cavity has water pressure. That's what gives their bodies shape and structure. Hydrostatic skeleton is water pressure. Animals commonly called worms are classified into 3 different phyla: flatworms, roundworms, and annelids. What feature distinguishes them? Only flatworms have radial symmetry. Only roundworms have a complete digestive tract. Only annelids are heterotrophic. Only roundworms have a gastrulous stage of development, or only annelids are segmented. E. Only annelids are segmented. Flatworms and roundworms are both smooth on the outside. Roundworms, annelids, and mollusks share what features? Bilateral symmetry, a pseudocoelom, protostomy, segmentation, or A and C. A and C. These groups all share bilateral symmetry, and they develop like protostomes. All right, moving on to arthropods. Arthropods have jointed appendages. They're the largest and most diverse phylum of animals, and their legs, antennae, mouthparts, and other organs are jointed. They include things like trilobites, chelicerates, myriapods, crustaceans, and insects. In fact, there's more than 1 million species of arthropods that exist. Arthropods have an exoskeleton, exo like exterior. All arthropods produce a tough outer exoskeleton made of chitin. Chitin is a special type of carbohydrate that supports and protects the body. As their bodies grow, they molt and grow a new exoskeleton. Excuse me. Arthropods have complex bodies. They're segmented into 3 major regions: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And segments in each region develop specialized functions. They have specialized organs with well-developed respiratory, nervous, circulatory, digestive, reproductive, and excretory systems. And they're the most diverse group of animals. They're subdivided into 5 subphyla. One group is made up of extinct trilobites. Spiders, scorpions, and other chelicerates have claw-like mouthparts called chelicerae. And the other 3 subphyla have mandibulates. They have jaw-like mouthparts called mandibles. Insects are highly successful arthropods. Most insects are terrestrial, although some do live or reproduce in fresh water. All right, and these are some examples of different orders of insects. So, silverfish, mayflies, crickets, cicadas, moths, wasps, flies, fleas. They're incredibly diverse. Echinoderms are marine deuterostomes, so we're shifting up here now. They're most closely related to chordates, and this group includes sea urchins, sea stars, and sea cucumbers. They're unusual among animals in that as adults, their bodies are radially symmetrical. All right, echinoderms have a water vascular system and tube feet. The water vascular system carries out functions of complex circulatory, respiratory, and excretory systems. And the tube feet pump out water and act as locomotion and sensory systems. What features do arthropods have, but not echinoderms? Radial symmetry, deuterostomes, jointed appendages, jaws, or a water vascular system. Good, jointed appendages. That's the feature that makes arthropods unique. Most animals are chordates. And chordates are a diverse group of at least 60,000 species, including humans, mammals, fish, and other familiar animals. Now, it's important to note that if it's a chordate, it has a nerve cord. It doesn't necessarily mean it has vertebra and a spine. Chordates all share 4 features. Every chordate expresses these 4 features at some point in its life, since they're inherited from a common ancestor. Notochord, dorsal nerve cord, a pharyngeal gill slit, and a postanal tail. Some of these features you might only see in a developmental stage, right? Like humans are animals, we're chordates. We have tails developmentally, but by the time they're born, the tails are gone, right? Same with pharyngeal slits. All right, some chordates are invertebrates. Tunicates, lancelets, and hagfish are all invertebrate chordates. Vertebra are a series of small structures that make up a backbone, and they can be made of bone or cartilage. Tunicates and lancelets are invertebrate chordates. They lack cranium and vertebra. So we're looking down here on this tree. Lampreys have cartilage around their nerve cord, and they were the first animals to evolve vertebra. Hagfishes secrete sticky slime to help slide their bodies out of danger. Fishes are aquatic vertebrates with jaws. All fish have jaws, gills, paired fins, and a sense organ called a lateral line used for detecting vibrations. Fishes are divided into 2 groups, bony fishes and cartilaginous fishes like sharks. Fishes are the most diverse and abundant group of vertebrates. Most ancient fishes had cartilage skeletons, like sharks. Bony fish include 2 groups, the ray-finned fishes and the lobe-finned fishes. Fish in this group have lungs that can breathe air. The lobe-finned fishes have lungs and can breathe air when water is scarce, and robust pectoral fins allowing them to move on land. These features are the precursors of modern tetrapod lungs and legs. This is what gave rise to land animals. Amphibians live double lives. So amphibians are tetrapods, or 4 legs, right? 4 feet, that began colonizing the land about 375 million years ago. They breathe air using lungs and through their skin. They need water for reproduction and to keep their skin moist so they can breathe. And there are 3 different types of amphibians, right? Frogs we're all familiar with, salamanders and newts, and then there's this really cool rare group of amphibians that are only found in South America called caecilians. And they live underground. We know very little about them. The Detroit Zoo used to have some, but it was really difficult to see them on display because they live underground. They had kind of an ant farm set up for them. All right. So frogs are either smooth-skinned true frogs, or this group also includes the warty-skinned toads. Salamanders and newts have body structures like lizards, but their skin is very different. Lizards would have scales, and these have skin more like a frog or a toad. And caecilians are amphibians that lack limbs and resemble giant earthworms. Reptiles were the first vertebrates to thrive on land. Reptiles evolved about 310 million years ago, and many reptiles that once dominated the planet are now extinct. Reptiles are adapted to retain water inside their bodies and reproduce outside of it. So these are the first animals that can live their whole life cycle on land. Reptiles live and reproduce on dry land. Land adaptations include reduced water loss from the skin due to scales and internal fertilization and amniotic eggs make reproduction independent of water. Reptiles include snakes, lizards, turtles, crocodilians, and birds. Feathers are modified scales. And our scientists believe that, or we don't believe, we accept that birds evolved from theropod dinosaurs. All right. Non-avian reptiles include lizards, snakes, turtles, tortoises, and crocodilians. Avian reptiles are the birds. So birds are feathered reptiles adapted to flight. They have a unique set of features that set them apart from other reptiles and allow them to fly. They have feathers, wings, their bones are lightweight and hollow, and they have a powerful heart and unique lungs that supply their bodies with lots of oxygen. And these are endothermic. They produce their own body heat metabolically. Mammals are warm, furry milk drinkers. Mammals evolved about 200 million years ago. They're endothermic amniotes with milk-secreting mammary glands. Mammals also have hair, which helps them conserve body heat. And they include things like dolphins and foxes. Of course, this is where humans would fit, right? Mammals are grouped by reproduction. So monotremes lay eggs, which is similar to reptiles. Monotremes are things like a platypus or an echidna. In marsupials and placental mammals, babies develop inside a uterus before birth. Marsupial babies continue to develop in pouches for many months. And placental mammals are connected to the mother's uterus and share her circulatory system. All right, here's a good summary tree of chordate diversity. Now again, I'm not going to ask that you memorize all of these different phyla, but what I do ask is that you know that these are traits that are common to animals. So if I give you information about some newly discovered species, you should be able to place it into the appropriate kingdom. All right, describe adaptations that mark the transition from fishes to amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Well, amphibians can breathe through moist skin and lungs. Reptiles develop scales which reduce water loss, and they even have kidneys that excrete small amounts of water. They have amniotic eggs and greater lung capacity. Mammals nourish their young through mammary glands and have hair to conserve their warmth. All right, and for our own evolutionary history, fossils and DNA tell the story. So humans are in a group of placental mammals called primates, and primate features include grasping hands with opposable thumbs, flat nails instead of claws, eyes set in the front of the skull with binocular vision, and the brain is large in comparison to our body size. Primates are divided into three main lineages. Now, primates originated about 60 million years ago. Humans evolved from common ancestors with other primates. We're just one sublineage of the primate group. So here's hominins. These are humans and our extinct human ancestors. Hominids, this is the group of great apes, and that includes orangutans, gorillas, bonobos, chimpanzees, and humans. And hominoids, this also includes gibbons in that group with apes. There's also monkeys, these have tails, apes do not. And prosimians, these would be like lemurs on Madagascar. Within the lineage of hominids, great apes, the human group is called hominins. Modern humans are the only hominid species that's not extinct, but there were many others. Skeletal evidence reveals common ancestry. Human skeletons are very similar to those of other apes, an indication of our evolutionary relatedness. One difference is locomotion. For instance, chimpanzees move by knuckle walking, while humans are bipedal and walk upright on 2 feet. Skulls and teeth reveal dietary adaptations. Large teeth and jawbones with heavy musculature indicate a tough diet with lots of chewing, which is what we see in the chimpanzee. Large teeth and their jawbones have large processes for big muscles to attach to. And having these processes that stick out on the back of the skull also are places for muscle attachment. Chimpanzees didn't cook their food. They had to do a lot of chewing. And in fact, they'd spend, I think, up to 80% of their time chewing. Molecular data reveals common ancestry. So studies of blood proteins and DNA make it clear that humans are a species of great ape. In fact, DNA sequences of humans and chimpanzees are almost identical. Of course, that's a picture of a baboon, not a chimpanzee. But either way, the point remains. Human evolution is partially recorded in fossils. Excuse me. Hominin fossils fall into 4 groups: Ardipithecus, Australopithecus, Paranthropus, and Homo. Now, humans are Homo sapien. This is the genus that we belong to. And there are at least 8 different human species, 8 different species of Homo. You can see them up here. So if this is primates down here at the base of the tree, we'd have Ardipithecus, the Australopithecus group, Paranthropus group, and then the more recently diverged Homo group, right? And our whole genus evolved about 2.5 million years ago. We see the first hominids appear on the planet. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, are the only species left alive today. And it's not entirely clear why the rest of these hominids went extinct. Human species were once diverse. Fossil evidence shows that multiple human species like Homo heidelbergensis, shown below, used to coexist. The trend in human evolution is rapid diversification of species followed by extinctions. Migration and culture have changed humans. Mitochondrial DNA, this is DNA from your mitochondria, and it's all inherited through your maternal lineage. So your mitochondrial DNA is exactly the same as your mom's and her mom's and her mom's. But anyways, mitochondrial DNA suggests early humans evolved in Africa. So this is where the genus Homo evolved. We evolved in Africa and later migrated out to other continents. So according to the primate evolutionary tree, which of the following is true? Orangutans are more closely related to monkeys than gorillas. Chimpanzees are more closely related to bonobos than humans. All great apes are bipedal. Or monkeys and prosimians lack an opposable thumb. Chimpanzees are more closely related to bonobos than to humans. All right, which conditions may have contributed to the evolution of humans? Well, changing environments in Europe, India, and the Middle East and East Africa resulted in climatic shifts that may have favored bipedalism and provided new resources and opportunities for humans to evolve. All right, so at this point, you should understand that the tree of life is a scientific hypothesis, accounting for the development and evolution of life on Earth. You should be able to describe how human evolution is supported by scientific evidence. You should also be able to demonstrate an understanding of the classification and evolution of organisms. You should be able to list the domains of living things, classify organisms into correct kingdoms for each domain, and distinguish major characteristics of members of the three domains. Thanks for watching, and remember, bring your questions to class or Zoom office hours, or shoot me an email and we can figure it out.